Corporate Risk Management Seminar. Thank you for being here today. Just a quick reminder that you can purchase any portion of this Corporate Risk Management Seminar on tape, either individual tapes or the entire series. And just see Joyce out there at the reception desk, and she'll see that you are getting signed up for that. Our speaker this morning, dealing with a very critical subject, energy. Shannon Burchett is Vice President of Pepsi-Cola Sweeteners in New York. Before becoming Vice President at Pepsi, he was Director of International Finance for Aetna Life and Casualty Company in Hartford. Positions prior to that included Assistant Vice President of Bankers Trust Company in the World Corporate Department and Manager of International Investment Portfolios, as well as Currency Protection Programs with Union Carbide in New York. Shannon holds an MBA in Finance from Tulane University and a BS in Electrical Engineering from Texas Tech. He's currently an adjunct professor of Finance and Economics at New York University. He's the author of a book section, Options in Risk Management in the Business Strategy International, published by Cornell Publications in London, 1989. His recent magazine articles include A Safer Cross-Border Takeover, Corporate Finance, January 1990, and Tightening Up on Swap Credit Risk. That's in Corporate Finance, March 1989. I give you Shannon Burchett.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you. Good. Thank you, Ron. So, bear with me as I get wired up here. Okay. Well, welcome to Chicago and to the second conference on corporate risk management. I think for any of you that came in from southern locations, I was just talking with one of you from Florida, so I trust you brought your winter gear here. With the weather as we have it, I guess anyone here for the conference today is serious about risk management. So in 2 or 3 months ago, when I was first asked to speak with you on risk management, it occurred to me I probably should have 2 different scenarios to talk with you about. First, if there were a shooting war that had developed in the Middle East and we had $60 oil prices, or alternatively, if there had been some type of settlement and prices had moved back to lower level. I hadn't thought of the other outcome. I suppose because there wasn't, in my view, a lot of probabilities that we'd have a stalemate, but or a standoff between Iraq and the Allied forces in the Gulf. And even at this point, when I was coming out yesterday, I wasn't sure what the military or political situation would be and what kind of prices we'd have this morning. But for anyone following the oil markets, I checked with, even though NYMEX hasn't opened in New York yet, Brent crude had traded up slightly, 15 cents a barrel to $32.25. So from my perspective, I really haven't changed my view much on where the oil market might be headed since the 2 or 3 months ago when I was thinking about the comments for today. I'm still somewhat apprehensive that we could have a shooting war in the Gulf, and certainly I think prices would react accordingly with $50, $60, $70 oil prices. But really depending on the extent of the conflict in the Gulf and how much damage is done to the energy or the oil fields there. But in any event, things I wanted to discuss with you today I think are relevant whether we're in a $20 or $60 market. Certainly the current prices and what the outlook for the volatility is going to influence the selection of risk management alternatives. But I think the basic corporate strategies and policies, exposure definitions, risk controls, tax accounting issues, all those things are going to be the same really regardless where the market is. And today what I want to do is just give you my views on managing risk from a sort of a non-oil industry end-user perspective. I think the approaches that we've looked at Pepsi are, to some extent should be applicable to other end users, whatever industries you're in. But just out of curiosity, how many of you are with companies that have some energy risk? I presume most of you. I guess really, for most corporations, the Fortune 100, Fortune 500, I think it's probably just a matter of degrees what how large the energy position is. The perhaps surprising thing is in the last few years that up until the run-up in prices for end users of energy, there may not have been a lot of focus toward energy management programs. And I think part of that may be that simply the oil prices were during the mid-'80s were, at least from a user standpoint, relatively stable compared to what we have now, and sort of a favorable trend, which didn't seem to be a risky environment, at least not on the surface. But I think all that changed on August the 2nd with Mr. Saddam's invasion of Kuwait. So we truly have a different world now. For any of you that haven't gone through the process of quantifying precisely what your energy exposures are for your corporation, I think you might find it surprising. I was just talking with John from Union Carbide and mentioned to him when we took a look at what our total risk position was, and we have over 250 actual use points throughout the country. So there was some initial effort in trying to set up reporting and quantifying our risk. We were surprised to find a position that was on the order of 100 million gallons per year usage, primarily in diesel. And I think there are a lot of other similar situations. Bob Baldoni from IMCOR, I was talking with him last night, and he was saying he was working on a project with the UK Post Office, really a foreign exchange management, risk management project. And with all the volatility in energy prices, he said, let's have a look to see what your exposures are. And they said, well, it's really just probably minimal. And they went through the records to find that it was a $30 million pound annual expenditure. And in looking at it a little closer, since of course oil is a dollar-based position, they really had not only an oil exposure, but a substantial foreign exchange risk associated with that. So I think, fortunately for U.S. corporations, there's not the attached foreign exchange piece of it, but for any of you it would be with foreign corporations, that's the second element of the risk management. The first question that I've seen encountered when the whole question of managing risk comes up, and this might be better posed to say why I have an energy management program. I think the question of hedging is one that, or not hedging, comes up subsequently. But as a starting point, since I think this is typically the first question I've seen asked in our company and with the other companies I've been in when a new area is looked at, is why hedge. I think that there are possibly a number of answers, which depends on your company and your situation, your philosophy. But I think one of the first reasons is if you have a view to the markets, which is different than what's available to you in terms of the market prices, then there's obviously a hedge opportunity there. Alternatively, for companies that tend to manage toward a budgeted or a planned number, if current prices give you an opportunity to lock in price levels that help you make your plan as part of your overall cost structure for the remainder of the year or for the following year, then I think that's one explanation that seemed to carry some weight within Pepsi. Secondly, for any of you that are in competitive industries, which I think we certainly find ourselves in a competitive environment, the question of making sure all of our cost programs, all of our risk management programs help us stay competitive, and we found the same to be true from the energy standpoint. And then following that, the whole idea of what business are we in? Are we wanting to be sustaining in the risk on the energy markets, or rather are we risk averse? We want to compete in the beverage industry or the food products, restaurant businesses, and want to really lay off any substantial exposures in other areas. And I think that has some merit, some importance in a number of companies. And then finally, just consistent with whatever the current risk management program is and philosophy of the company and the board is within a corporation. I mean, for ourselves, where we already have risk management programs in the traditional areas, currency and interest rate, I think our approach in energy management we try to be consistent with that. And just looking at this checklist of the questions that tend to come up in setting up a new program really reminded me of the evolution of the market. Going back 12, 14 years ago when I was with Union Carbide, some of the same sort of questions were asked when we began managing foreign exchange risk. Well, should we be hedging? Is it speculating? What sort of hedge strategies should we have? What sort of policies? And those same sort of questions, I think, came up then. Following that in the mid-'80s with the development of the swaps market, I think the same sort of evolution may have occurred in interest rate management. So I would say the 1990s is the topic of this presentation is energy risk management in the 90s. I think generally commodity risk management in the 90s is going to attract more attention. You know, I might mention to you also, I have copies for any of you that want copies of the slides I'm using today. There's some booklets at the back that you're welcome to take with you. Okay. The other thing I would say, for just thinking through the evolution of the market, I think the technologies developed in these other risk management areas, foreign exchange or interest rate, you're going to find in a lot of ways are applicable to commodity management. The expertise that's been developed in your other areas, whether treasury or risk management departments, you're going to find are applicable in the management of your energy risk. Although there are some specialty aspects that I'll point out to you later that I think bear consideration. As I mentioned a moment ago, I think that it's sometimes surprising when you do a tally of what your company's aggregate position is. And I think some companies have really, including financial institutions, have truly been surprised when they try to assess what their oil price risk was. I mean, the classic example, I think, are banks, which I used to be a banker, so I include myself, I guess, in this category. But in the 80s, the banks that were making loans to companies in the oil patch, I don't think really may have realized the full extent that they were stepping up to energy risk, and in a market totally different than this with declining energy prices. Secondly, lenders are investors in transportation companies, and clearly there's an energy risk there, although it is somewhat indirect. And I think the last point is really the one that had some bearing for PepsiCo and probably for your companies as end users. I think aside from quantifying the direct usage, whether in our case using X number of gallons of diesel or unleaded or natural gas, I think there's also some what I'll call economic exposure to energy prices for transactions and business we do with other companies. Some of the freight transportation companies that we deal with, we're indirectly catching the pass-through price which reflects the energy. So I think there's some additional economic exposure there, a little more difficult to manage, but I think something that we try to be aware of. To the point on the overall energy effect on various corporations, I think the stock prices for various firms since Saddam's invasion of Kuwait tell us something about what the market's assessment of the impact of energy is on various corporations. I think as a rough gauge. I mean, certainly a lot of other variables that affect the stock prices, but if you look at airline stocks, they've tended to suffer. Oil producers generally have benefited, and I think ourselves as a group of corporate end users have not been beneficiaries with these oil price run-ups. But just to think a moment about how you would tend to begin a program identifying, and I think this is the first step, really trying to identify precisely what your exposures are. The question that came up for us before we had precise reporting in place was exactly what are we using in the way of products? Well, we use diesel in our fleets, in the various divisions. We use unleaded gas to some extent. In our operations, we use some natural gas, some fuel oil. In our fleet of corporate jets, we also have some expenditures for jet fuel. So that was our starting point. We wanted to know exactly what are the commodities we're using. And then secondly, precisely what are the volumes. And this is saying the obvious, I guess, on the information gathering, but in some companies, if you haven't focused on the energy area, you may not have this data in hand. I think that's the starting point.